April 10th, and I will call the meeting of the Finance Committee to order. Approval of the agenda. Does anyone have any adjustments to the agenda?
I would like to add, we didn't talk about this at our last Finance Committee meeting. The budget amendments have been pulled off of consent agenda and are now FYI, and I'm not sure everybody knows that. So I just want to add that to the agenda so we can discuss it.
Okay, that will be added as item 5A. And I would like to adjust item 5, next meeting / budget timeline adjustment. Are there any other changes or adjustments to the agenda? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I move that we approve the amended agenda.
Motion, second. Joe seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Approve the minutes from our last March 27th meeting. Does anyone have any changes?
I make a motion that we approve the March 27th minutes.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, approved. All right, we'll move to item 4, 2018-19 Superintendent's Proposed Budget. Mr. Covington and Dr. Houlihan.
Good evening. We're going to do a run through of the superintendent's budget recommendation for 2018-19. You should have the presentation at your dais.
Should we ask questions as we go or wait till the end?
I'd prefer that we wait till the end to ask the questions, if that's okay with the committee.
Okay, our agenda for today, we will see where we are in the budget development process, look at some budget trend data, look at our assumptions for state and local funding, the superintendent's priorities, a total look at our proposed operating and capital budget, and then give you a summary. On the timeline in the development process, you'll see we're on the April 10th date for the superintendent's budget presentation to the Board of Ed, which will be tonight. And also on the bottom of this slide, you'll see the Board of Education timeline. And from what has changed since the last time you all have saw this timeline, we've confirmed the BOE BOCC joint meeting on April 26th. And note that we will have a Finance Committee meeting on April 24th, pending the change that was just added. I don't know exactly what the change is. And on May 8th, you will have to approve the budget recommendation to go to the board, to the BOCC. Some budget trend data. Take a look at this graph. You will see that our total budget has increased since 2015 by $21 million or 6%. The percentage of the funding from our sources all remain relatively the same, anywhere from 64% for the state, 31% for the county, including capital and operating, and the remainder of federal. One of the major contributors to the increases in the budget are our benefits rate increases. And here we see the retirement rate increase. Since the 2015 year to 2018, it has gone up 15%. It would cost about $6 million. And if you look at next year's proposed rate increase that we receive from the state, that will be another 7.6% increase. Our health insurance premiums, if you look at the same time period between 2015 and 2018, it's gone up 8%. And that's a cost of about $2.8 million to the local budget. But the increase proposed for next year at $6,104, that'll be another 4% increase. Another contributor to the budget is growth. And this chart shows the growth of all students in the county, not just UCPS students. Total growth since 2015 is 3.5%, but the charter school growth during that same time period is 85%. How does that equate to dollars with charter school payments? Since 2015, the pass-through to charters has increased by 99.5%, for $3.7 million. And you will see when we get to the later part of the slide that our increase for students for next year is scheduled about 639 students. What was our assumptions as we prepared the budget this year? On the state assumption, the K-3 class size reduction will remain the same as the current year. As you have been following the legislature, they are going to phase in the class size reduction over a 4-year period, but next year there will be no change. The state has proposed a new allotment for enhancements teachers, proposed at a 1 to 191 for K-5 enrollment. They will scale this up over 4 years. Next year, we expect to get 23 teachers. The certified staff, principal, assistant principals, and other employees all will receive a raise. And the health insurance retirement benefits costs will increase. On the local budget side, that we are assuming that the Board of County Commissioners will fund the state mandated salary and benefit increases as explained on the previous slide. We're hoping that they will maintain the school tax rate of 0.445 on each $100 valuation of taxable property. And as you will see later in the presentation by the superintendent, our major initiative this year is school safety and security for students and staff. I will turn it over to the superintendent for his budget priorities.
Thank you, Mr. Covington. So as presented at the last Finance Committee meeting and again today, there are 3 kind of major big categories that from our perspective, we're presenting to the board in our draft budget. The first one being school safety, the second one being investing in our employees and our staff, and then the third is around continuous improvement. As the board received a memo from me several weeks ago, we have developed a 3-year phase-in plan, really to focus on school safety and social and emotional learning. This has been a topic that has come up on a monthly basis pretty much since I've been here. And I think the board knows by now that we really are committed to trying to look to do something innovative and different in this area. The 3-year phase-in for next year, phase 1, you can see the positions that would be allocated on this plan for additional counselors, social workers, and mental health therapists. We also have some gaps with our lead positions, so we're asking for a lead counselor role. We're also asking in this plan on year 1 to look at training, specifically not just training for counselors and for teachers, for counselors and social workers, but also for teachers. And that would primarily be during the summer and into next year. And this training would focus on major areas of focus like warning signs. How do you work with children who are coming from traumatic backgrounds, who might have anxiety? That really, how do you proactively recognize where we might have gaps in terms of where kids need additional resources? And then the third aspect of this is the actual physical safety piece from a capital standpoint. 2 aspects to this one around school visitor management. One, we have a number of, I'd say the overwhelming majority of our elementary schools that do not have a entrance door check-in system. That is a buzzer system with a camera access where someone from the office can let you in. So you'll see in the budget that we want to, beginning next year, ensure that all of our elementary schools primarily have that in place. We also have funding in the budget for a visitor check-in system. And some of our schools are primarily PTOs or boosters have paid for a visitor check-in system that links to background checks and other sources to clear you when you come visit your child at school. But in a lot of our schools, we don't have that. So this is to put equity into all schools to make sure we have a common check-in system. In terms of human capital, Dennis mentioned the increases on salaries in terms of what we expect increases to be at the state level. We also know we've got to take care of our benefit increases. Those 2 are pretty much mandatory. We have in the budget a compensation study that's being conducted for market increases for salaries. This is specifically targeting our facilities department and our skilled labor, our skilled worker group, our plumbers, electricians, carpenters, etc. That is where the most significant gap in market is. We have funding in the budget to allow for a stipend to help offset the cost for our aspiring teacher and administrator cohort program. And then there is funding support for beginning teacher coordinator positions out of HR as we look to recruit and retain more of our beginning teachers. That is a gap in our HR department that's been identified. And finally, on the organizational improvement, this year we are conducting intensive tutoring in 6 of our schools, our focus schools, 4 of which are right here in Monroe, and 2 are in the Forest Hills cluster. In speaking with Dr. Kevin Plew at Forest Hills High School and Dr. Mike Harvey at Monroe High School and the principals of these schools, and in looking at our data, we are asking for funding to look at 9th grade math tutoring, very similar to the structure that is taking place right now in the 6 schools I mentioned with 4th and 7th grade. There's funding in the budget we're asking for to ensure that we have equity in one of our programs, which is IB. We have historically not provided transportation for children outside the Marvin cluster to attend the IB program. This has been something that's kind of been a concern of mine. We have families that have said that my child qualifies for the IB program, but we may have a hard time getting them there. So there's funding allocated to help those families that might come from outside the Marvin cluster to participate in that. There's funding to look at student supports in secondary schools and looking at primarily learning disabilities and curriculum and intervention programs that have been successful in elementary that we'd like to replicate in the secondary level. And finally, as many families are learning from last night's phone call, we have a new student assignment management platform that we would like to invest in annually to make sure that as we look at student transfers and grandfathering and even choice lotteries for schools like CATA or early college, that we have that in place. So that's what it means by student assignment management support. So those are our 3 big buckets. Again, we'll take questions at the end. Today, the board received another memo from me regarding the social emotional learning plan. I'm happy to take any questions when Mr. Covington wraps up.
Thank you, Dr. Houlihan. Now we will go look at the numbers tied to these initiatives and other factors in the budget. First, we need to start with our revenue projection. This is the same chart I showed you before. If you look at the adjusted penny value that I did receive from the county staff, the $2.6 million times the 44.5-cent penny, we get the 116 million. Add in the true up funding. Our total projected revenue for next year is $119.4 million. So what does our operating budget look like? Start with our base budget of the $96 million that we got adopted this year. We have proposed in the budget redirects of $2.166 million, which is a reduction of supplies and materials and equipment out central office allocations, and a $1.6 million redirect of utilities from the operating budget to our indirect costs. Moving on to sustaining operations, our program continuation lines include that student assignment management support system that Dr. Houlihan mentioned at a cost of $40,000. And we also received from the county notice that our providers for utilities are projecting rate increases. We took a look at our utilities and have an average increase of 3% for $359,000. So our total sustaining operations piece of next year's budget is at $399,000. Investing in our employees, we mentioned the state projected increases for salaries for certified assistant principals and non-certified staff. Those 3 numbers that you see to the right add up to $894,000. The compensation market study for our focus on maintenance labor is $287,000. The retirement health rate increases $686,000, and the aspiring teachers and administrator stipend about $112,000 for a total of investing in our employees, $1.978 million. Student growth, the growth in the county is predominantly in our charter schools. We are projecting a 639 new students in our charter schools that will cost the district $1,766,000. that will have our per pupil growing from $2,203 this year to $2,261 per student for next year for 4,073 students. School safety and security, Dr. Houlihan explained what this initiative was. So the cost of these are the 17 school-based positions of counselors, social workers, and mental health therapists of $1.4 million. Our central office is the lead counselor and the stipend for the social worker at $105,000. He mentioned the professional development for social and emotional training at $150,000 and the school visitor management check-in system of $75,000. I would note that the camera system will be in the capital budget, not in the operating budget. The beginning teacher support, the 2 coordinators at $120,000. And then the programs for our secondary school support, 9th grade intensive tutoring at Forest Hills and Monroe, $300,000. District-wide transportation for the IB program, $100,000. And the learning disability student support of $47,000, bring our total for program expansion and new initiatives to $2,255,000. And our proposed county appropriation of $101,150,039. That's a 4% growth over the current year budget, or $4,233,580. This is how we allocate these dollars by purpose, with the majority of the money going to instructional services to pay for school support activities and staff and teaching and learning, and 45% for central office such as transportation, finance, legal, HR, and facilities. How do we allocate the money by object code? As you can see, as in all educational industry, it's people driven. So 68% of the funds go to salaries and benefits, and 20% to purchase services, and mainly most of that is your maintenance projects, utilities, bus and vehicle repair, and some professional development. And the 12% for supplies and materials. The 2018-19 proposed capital budget, it's got 3 facets: facilities, transportation, technology services. In the facilities budget, it's broken into identified building projects. We're proposing about $14.5 million to work on our buildings. And we have a vehicle replacement schedule of replacing 10 vehicles a year at a price of $35,000. For the total facilities piece of the capital budget is $14.8 million. In transportation, we're planning to replace 50 bus cameras next year at $152,000, and we'll do 50 the next year to get all our buses cameras up and operational. And we would like to purchase 2 bus lifts for our current bus garage while the buses are in the garage while they're getting maintained. And so the transportation piece is $232,000. On the technology services, we are in the 2nd year of our administrative device lease, where we leased about 3,000 computers for our admin. So that lease payment is $635,000. We have a bid out right now for the devices for the students for grades 6 through 12, and it's projected to be about $2.05 million. And we need servers in case of emergency for our backup system for $485,000. So the total of 3.17 for technology services. I have to fix that on the slide, for $18,249,000 as the county capital budget.
Just for the finance committee to know, we will plan on, for the facilities, obviously that budget still needs to go to the facilities committee for review, and the transportation and technology will go to the strategic planning technology committee for review at their next meeting. So both of those committees will actually vet all of this, and then it will come back to the full board.
So in summary, if you start with your county operating budget, we propose to increase the budget by $4.2 million over last year's adopted budget for $101,150,039. The capital budget is proposed to increase by $2.7 million to go to $18.2 million, for a total county appropriation of the $119,399,735. And you look at the value of the penny, you will see that we have presented a balanced budget for 2018-19.
Who would like to go first with questions?
Stipends for high priority schools. Do you anticipate any additional stipends being needed at any schools this year that we didn't have in last year's budget?
I am not, no.
The 41,000 students we're projecting for fiscal 19, where did we get that number? Slide 8, sorry. Thank you. Is that from DPI? Is that from?
DPI's projection
fiscal
where they
19.
add total county. They don't give you a projection just for our kids. And so the 41,000 is a look at McKibben study and projection work done with myself and Dr. Barnes based on current enrollment.
Okay, so did we kind of back into what we think the enrollment's going to be at the
Yes.
charter schools? But you had said
Well,
at last meeting that you had talked to
Yes,
several.
I called the major charter schools
Okay.
to get their number.
Right, well, there's a lot of them, yeah.
I also will just add that we know that there is a new private school, I believe, opening up as well. So that doesn't take that number into account.
That's correct.
We go back to slide 6.
Oops, sorry,
Are we going one at a time or?
that's fine.
Go ahead.
No, I
and
have
finish
nothing
up.
on 6. No, let's go in order.
Go ahead.
For slide 6, do you have a number that we're increasing? I see the percentage of 7.6. Do you have a estimated dollar value to that?
Retirement contribution.
Retirement contribution.
You remember the breakout from 12 health and retirement?
He has it on the local funding on number 20, Joe, at 685,931, and it's retirement
That's
and
both.
health
Right.
costs.
I would have to give you the breakout between the two.
That's just the local piece. The rest
Yes.
the state pays.
Correct.
So that's anybody on our local budget. Do we have any teachers on our local budget, or are they all,
Yes, a few.
we are?
Yes.
Okay. Can you at some point you give us a breakdown of like principals, APs, who's on local budget just by category?
Yes.
Thank you.
Now, I thought it was mentioned that we did not have any
I know
actual
that they don't
teachers
have
on
that.
local funding.
We don't have any what we classify as classroom teachers,
Okay.
but in our I can't recall the category. What's the money?
Yeah. Why don't you come over here so we're.
What's the amount of money?
You're not referring to TAs now, are you? When you say, okay. You're talking about certified.
We have a pot of money called critical needs, and that pot of money has some teachers in it. They're not ADM teachers that we allocate out to the school.
Okay. Did you have any? Yeah. It's not, it's been a contention in the past that that's
Yeah.
considered part of our
Charter
budget,
school.
but
Or
it's
what was
actually
it?
Allocation.
Yeah,
Allocation or
Charter school
something.
allocation.
allocation. I like that.
Well, that's the only place, yeah. Okay. I go to 11 next.
11.
What was the allotment for enhancement teachers prior to next year? What is it now? It's 1 to 191 is the new allotment. Does anyone know what the old one was?
The state didn't allot enhancement teachers. This is a new allotment.
So our okay. That all has to do with hospital. Okay.
Was this part of the legislation backing
House Bill
up
90.
the K through
Yes.
3
On
classroom
House
size?
Bill
Exactly.
90, right? That they were going to separate out what the enhancement teacher allotments were.
Correct.
Okay. I go to page 14 or slide 14, if anyone has anything
Go
before that. I would like to know in the budget how many new positions we have and the cost of each of the new positions. within the budget? But, and I would assume that these plus any other new positions that aren't being broken out on, that he's not referring to on the budget. Are there any more in addition to the, this is just social workers and stuff. In addition to that too, is there any other new positions? And if so, their costs?
We can do that. So you've got, you know, your social emotional piece, but then you've got your beginning teacher coordinators. That's would be 2 positions as an example, but we can run that between Dr. Barnes and Mr. Covington. That can be provided for sure.
Okay.
Would you be adding new positions for the intensive tutoring, or would that just be you pay an extra stipend to
Those would be
teacher?
tutoring positions, but they are not certified staff.
Okay.
So I mean, it would technically be a new position, but it won't be
It's
a
not
teaching
certified.
position.
Okay.
They're contract, they're at will.
Okay. All right.
Okay, cool. Cool. So just so I understand slide 15, the lead counselor over which of the counselors? The social workers, the mental health counselors, or are we just talking school counselors?
So in this one, we're talking about school counselors. Right now, we don't have, like, I'll give you an example. Our school nurses, we have 2 lead nurses that are central service nurses that go out to schools and provide training, staff development. They help with staffing. They help with, you know, I was at a school 2 weeks ago that was having a student crisis and they needed an extra hand. We have no such thing with counselors. And so our plan was to start at the high school level first and have 1 lead counselor next year that can support our high school counselors on counseling. Right now, our counselors don't have anyone to go to other than their principal.
So once we add this level of social worker and mental health therapist, what will be the position of our guidance counselors? Like I assume we've somewhat divided into areas of what each of those groups of people will do. Will the guidance counselors just be for academics and college and those type of things and not so much? What about IEPs and 504s? Because currently the guidance counselors are responsible for those in each school.
They would probably still remain in place. There would have to at least be 1 504 chair at every school that is responsible for that. But the intent here would be to take some of what is currently on your counselor's load around the social supports. Not to say that they can't still do that, but to take some of that off their load to give that to someone like a social worker.
Okay. We've talked before about the guidance counselor at each school who's responsible for 504s and IEPs and who they can get information from up a level. This lead counselor won't be that person.
We have a 504 compliance administrator now. So when it comes to 504, that is the individual that our 504 chairs report to. That doesn't impact this plan at all.
So the counselors are going to be reporting
They do.
to 2 people in this scenario. You're going to have a lead counselor, but if it's a 504 or IEP issue, they're going to be going to, is that Dr. Gravely?
Yes.
They're going to be dealing with her for any of those issues. Is that?
Perhaps. I think that the 2 of them will be working in tandem very closely together on those issues. You know, it's one of those situations where if you look at the separation of duties between the counselor and the 504 piece, the Dr. Gravely provides technical support on mostly compliance and the legal aspect in coordination with Ms. Morris. The lead counselor will basically be the person responsible for overseeing training for counselors. We don't have any training for counselors as it is, or support around their role, their function, their job demands. There's no one in central services that provides any such service or support above and beyond the 504 piece.
But is there training and stuff in place for the 504? Because I think that from a complaint standpoint and from my own personal situation, they need some help with 504.
Well,
and
let me jump on Kathy's comments and add, would it be perhaps to move towards more of a program where we take the IEP and the 504 responsibility out of the counselors entirely.
But where would it go?
Well, we have a position, a person that specifically that's,
At
or
each school?
persons, not necessarily. Depending on caseload, they might be floating in the cluster
That's too much.
instead of trying to have a counselor doing, I mean, if we're going to add counselors, should we not be more specific in the job duties?
And I
then
guess
have-
that's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
What's the job duty of each? Now that
Yeah.
we're adding this these two new levels, what's the job duty of each level?
So
And I am concerned with we've talked about
Yeah.
this, the 504 and IEP kind of falls through the cracks.
So I have my whole team ready to talk about this.
Ready.
So
wow.
Would you like to make
The-
add to the discussion?
I think two things. One, when these job descriptions are developed and fleshed out, I'm more than happy to send that to the finance committee so that you can see the delineation of roles and responsibilities. Two, I think we do need to examine the roles and responsibilities that we have on our current employees. I'll give you an example, and my team may push back on this. When I was a principal, I had an EC department chair. That individual was also my 504 compliance person. That person was also a member of our intervention assistance team. So it's one of those situations where perhaps if we have an EC chair in high schools, which I'm assuming we do,
Yeah.
then why would that person not take on some of these 504 responsibilities
I
as
want-
an example?
I want to be clear. I'm not slamming the counselors because
Right.
they have a yeoman's task at the high schools and other schools to get done what needs to be done. They have a lot on their plates right now. I'm just saying 504 and IEP is kind of something that's been thrust on one counselor at each school. But anyways,
Well, none of the counselors should be doing IEPs.
okay.
IEPs are handled through the EC department, and because of the funding streams, we have to keep
Okay, then
EC
504s.
and 504 separately. So
Okay,
there should be a 504 coordinator at every school, and then an EC case manager or department chair, depending on what level you're at. And then there's an SNA who's an assistant principal who kind of oversees all of that.
But the 504 is with a guidance
The
counselor. at each
504 is
school.
with a count. It's used typically a counselor. The principal appoints whomever they want. You just have to have one. It's typically a counselor. And then training is done by Dr. Gravely in tandem sometimes with Deb Smith.
Are you saying that you can't have the same person that does 504s and IEPs?
Yeah,
In a
no,
school?
because your EC funding, your
Mhm.
IDEA funding is what funds your EC department.
All right.
And 504 is not funded in that.
So you've got to identify it down to the
Correct.
individual person that does that.
Correct.
So let's say you could have a IEP coordinator for XYZ cluster. Okay? But then you have the 504 coordinator, and I don't know how much caseload, how many 504s we have versus IEPs.
Mhm.
But I guess what I'm suggesting is specializing if you can separate those out. Is that,
I mean, you have your program specialists in the EC department that are assigned to different schools. Is it clusters? So you have your program specialists that are assigned by cluster. And we have some that are specialized with disability, but primarily by cluster.
okay.
And yeah, we have a behavior and an autism, I think.
But that's
And-
who the IEP team goes
That's
to.
all EC, correct. That would be IEPs. 504s, like I said, we have the typically a counselor at the school level who is your 504 coordinator. And then Wendy Gravely doesn't supervise their performance, but oversees their 504 compliance.
Okay.
Correct.
All right.
And then
means. So when you're overseeing compliance, can they call her, or is there a lawyer at central office that they call? Or
if there's a legal issue, Deb Smith in my department handles EC. She handles all students with disabilities issues.
but if a
EC or
counselor has
504.
a question,
If it's a legal question, they can call Deb Smith directly, or they can go to Wendy Gravely, or they can go to their principal, and the principal comes to Deb Smith. It all depends, but they have access to call Deb Smith directly if they want to.
Where does the parent go?
The parent can call any of those people. Deb gets calls from parents. I get calls from parents. Wendy gets calls from parents.
Well, if we're asked, where is the appropriate,
Wendy Gravely
Jane,
would be the most appropriate
she on
person
a
outside of the
504.
school. If they've talked to the school level counselor and
And-
the principal, once they need central services, it would be Wendy.
okay,
But
so
they should have
that's the
tried the
next step
principal
up.
first.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, digress a
she,
little bit from
and
the budget.
she does call whoever that 504 coordinator is at each school. She does training sessions
She
for
does.
them.
Every year, there's 2 training sessions typically in the beginning of the year, prior to school starting, both year-round and traditional, and Deb Smith does that training with her. And then I think there's a refresher mid-year.
Does she audit individual cases to make sure they're in compliance and being adhered to? And
You know,
just
we have
random-
Easy 504 now, which is a program like Easy IEP where Dr. Gravely and Deb Smith have kind of administrative rights. So they, and part of what I've asked Deb to do is to periodically pull up both IEPs and 504 plans randomly to ensure compliance so that we kind of do a,
They used to do spot checks in the schools
Plus
where
we
they
have-
would pull a kid out and ask if, you know, you have a 504, is it being,
Correct.
and I know this
Yeah.
again from personal experience,
Yeah.
is
A
it
review
being
of the
administered
file.
correctly? They're asking the
that comes out of
students.
Dr. Bowers does, don't they differ before testing?
So
They go out
that's
and they do
somewhere
spot
else.
checks
Okay.
and pull kids, yeah.
All right.
So it sounds like we have some work to do around identifying roles, responsibilities, and getting
Yes.
some job
And that-
descriptions out.
Yeah,
Especially if we're adding extra
yes,
folks.
we do
Yeah.
have a little bit of that. Okay,
Six-
I'll move on from that.
Yes.
School visitor management system,
Yep.
huge, like this. But $75,000 doesn't seem like enough money. How many schools are we talking about that, I'm looking for Mark, he's not here. How many there you are. How many schools are we talking about that still need these visitor?
So I don't have the
management
numbers right with me, but we got a proposal to do all of the schools, and many of them already have them.
systems? Right,
And I think the proposal to do the entire district from scratch was 90,000. So we backed off the schools that we have.
that you already had.
Oh,
Okay, okay,
this
that's
is a
great. And that
system.
includes,
We'll- We'll implement this from scratch. This is a,
Well, no, we
System
already
like
have
that.
some in the district now. We're going to supplement what we have by putting them in schools
A
where we
lot of
don't
those
so
already
what we
have
have
them.
now is one provider?
yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
CCSS does all of it. The people that do Identikit do the check-in system. And when you first use it, you have to use your driver's license and it checks your background for sexual predators and stuff like that. And then it's in the system every time. And
We
you have
put
to-
one in central services for the first time this year. So when you come into the front lobby at the
Right.
main office, we have one now as well.
Does that include the cost of the laptop or the computers that go with the systems? Yes?
We already have computers up there now.
So we're good. Okay. And then every year there's licensing, or did we get a package deal on the licensing? Sorry, you might want to just stay up.
That's okay. Again, I left that folder back, but it covers us for a year. The intent is for us to take care of the initial cost and then the ongoing cost of the ink and the badges and things that will be on the schools in the
Okay.
paper, right?
Is
So
this
they
a
would-
lease of the equipment or purchase?
Purchased.
Well, you purchase the license. We already own the computer.
It's
And
software.
we buy
And they give you
the machine, the printers that print out the IDs and stuff like that. But there is a yearly licensing fee for it that's like 200 and some odd dollars for each one. But we're going to say that should come out of the school budgets on a go forward, as well as the buying the additional taxes.
Before you run off, hold on. So you had mentioned that a lot of the PTOs have actually purchased some of the cameras and
So not the camera. So two different things. The visitor management system is where you go in and show your driver's
Right.
license. So we call them video doorbells. That's the terminology we want to
Okay.
use. So when you go up to the front door, someone inside can see you. You ring the buzzer, they see you and buzz you in. We have those at 3 of the elementary schools, and the plan is to add them to the rest of the elementary schools right now, and we will hopefully next year, the next budget year, come back to you for additional cameras as needed. And
So this is only elementary school,
is.
not middle and high.
it is.
It's
But
primarily,
some middle and high have them.
some middle and high already have them, but I think the primary thought behind this was start with your elementary schools, because currently your middle schools and high schools have SROs in place that are there towards the front anyway. So
A few years ago, the school system added double doors to some of the older schools, middle and high, where they did the buzzer systems in those already. Okay,
16?
16, sorry.
Good.
Can you explain again the 5,000 stipend for aspiring teachers and administrators?
Dr. Barnes?
These are put with the 2 Windgate cohorts. One is to help classified staff become teachers, and the other is for teachers to become administrators. These costs are to help defray the cost of them receiving their master's degree. In turn, what they would do is commit to a certain amount of time with Union County Public Schools after they receive their degree to pay it back with time served, sort of thing. That isn't the right word.
And
for
is
it.
what we have in the budget what's based on the people that are in the pipeline right now, or what
Correct.
you think of? Okay, great.
And then each year will be offset. Coming up this September, we'll begin a new cohort for folks who want to get their, who have their 2-year degree to get their 4-year degree and begin teaching. And so it'll be in every other year sort of rotation.
Okay. Just for consistency's sake, the number isn't divisible by 5,000, so we might want to round it up to.
Well, the problem with that is we have people, what we've decided to do is to make people commit to the first semester on their own cost on their own. And that way, as people drop out, that money may not be used the entire way, but I can't guarantee that they're going to make it all the way through.
Okay. Great.
So before we put our skin in the game, they've already put theirs in.
Okay,
Gotcha.
and don't sit down because my next question is for you too.
Yeah.
Beginning teacher coordinators, why two?
We get about 275 to 300 teachers throughout the course of a year is what we have to hire just to remain static with
New hires every year?
retires and resignations, that sort of thing. So of our beginning teachers, of that 100 to 110, 15, it depends on the year, we lose about 30% of those by year 3, which we then have to put the same cost into hiring new people, training those new people, getting their licenses done.
And I just want to remind the way, because this was new to me when we came back, North Carolina defines a beginning teacher as a teacher in years 0 to 3, not just your first year of teaching.
0
So
to 3.
that's the group that would be targeted from a support standpoint.
And were
So I
we
went back
required
over
by
the past
state?
4 years and looked at the attrition rate, and we lost about
Right.
30% by year 3.
Okay.
Our goal is to go ahead and put these people into place to manage a more comprehensive support system and cut down on the number of people that we lose.
Okay. So these aren't mandated positions or anything. This is us trying to keep attrition
Yes,
from
this is
happening.
my feeling that this is the best way to help retain.
So how will
the
they be
folks.
split up, the two?
My goal is to have one for elementary and one for middle high. That's the best breakdown we can do. I know it's going to be pretty subject specific in the middle and high school, so we'll look for someone for that role who's got experience in those roles, and then someone for elementary.
What do you, just because I can't, what do you envision doing? Is it continuing education? Is it just meeting with them to make sure?
Sure. We do a lot of work with our beginning teachers, but we haven't pointed everybody in the same direction.
Okay.
So our goal is to work with the teachers at the school who are in charge of the assistant principal or the lead teacher who works with the beginning teachers at that school, and do training and mentoring. And kind of what I want to do is build lateral ties between people from different schools so that if we can bring them together as a tighter unit, they may stay together better than fall apart alone.
So there is a teacher or somebody in each school
Correct.
who's responsible for
Correct.
like a
A
mentor
mentor.
kind of thing? Okay,
Yes.
good.
Every teacher will still have
They
their
don't-
own mentor. Every school will still have their own beginning teacher coordinator. This is someone to help troubleshoot, to work with those folks, and then to make sure all of our resources are allocated effectively.
Do
But
the
right
mentors
now
get a
that's-
stipend?
It depends on the school. The mentors that are going to be in the EPIC grant will receive a stipend at those 13 high priority schools. The other ones do not at this time, though.
The other piece, we have a really good partnership with UNC Charlotte, and they have a beginning
Correct.
teacher network that works with our beginning teachers, yet coordinating that and owning that from an HR standpoint. These individuals would help with that as well.
Correct. And we found that the folks who do work with the UNC Charlotte Beginning Teacher Support Network, they drop down to about a 10% recidivism rate or resignation rate.
On the
Sorry.
so on salary increases, teachers and certified staff, can you explain that? Like eligibility, is that across the board? What
That is a state funded mandate. That's what they say that they're moving teacher salaries to.
So
Okay.
the
So
ones
we
that
have
we
to match.
have on local
Correct.
money,
have to
that's the
match.
state mandate
So
for
whenever they say an
increases.
increase in something, they'll pay for only their people on their dime.
Sure.
We're not
Right.
So we
gonna pay
can't
for
do
ours.
anything.
We pick up
about
the
it.
local.
Correct.
I see that line.
17, I have a question about intensive tutoring. Is this after school, Saturday school, during the summer, all of the above?
This is primarily during school,
During
like we're
school
doing
hours?
during school hours,
Okay, so-
like we're doing in the other 6 focus schools.
All right, so you're pulling them out of whatever for additional tutoring. Okay.
Is it more just hands-on instruction during math time, or
It's a combination of pull in or push out. We have some schools that have found this to be very effective when the tutor pushes into the 4th grade classroom and provides extra support with small group instruction with the teacher. We have some schools that are finding better support with a pull out program where 3 or 4 kids come to them at the same time and they're tutoring them in a different room. We'll work with both of these school principals to figure out which model works best for them. But the primary focus will be on 9th grade math, which is where our gap is in these schools.
The Saturday school is a little bit different focus.
The Saturday schools currently, and if we have that into the future, would be part of the school's SIP and or their turnaround plan that would have additional resources aligned to that plan from the school level.
Okay.
Or from other services like DSS, critical need, et cetera.
All right. District-wide transportation to IB program. How much capacity of how many students could we add? I guess as we're looking in this budget, you're anticipating this fall. How many more students can we handle in the program starting this fall?
So it's my understanding that based on 2 things. This year, the principal at Marvin Ridge, Ms. Cook, went and did recruitment at all of the current high schools, which is something that we have not really traditionally done. And so marketing the IB program this year has been much more strategic for next year. As a result of that, there have been about 30 kids that have qualified, that meet the qualifications to enter the IB program in the fall as an 11th grader. And of those 30, I want to say there are about between 10 and 20 that have said, if transportation is an option, we would take it. If transportation is not an option, we don't know if we can commit to the IB program. So the number is based on those kids who have said, if this is an option, and we would like to take it.
I guess the question is are we increasing the number? So if it's normally 80 kids in the IB program for 2 grades, are we increasing that this year?
I don't think we're increasing it. I think that we are increasing the number of kids from other clusters.
So we threw a number at it. Can you tell us what your vision is of how this would work?
In terms of?
So of the 20-some kids that if transportation were provided, they would go with it. I'm just trying to figure out what the $100,000 is compromised.
It's just like
So Marvin Ridge would become their home school
for 11th and 12th grade.
We actually had the addresses of the students that wanted to go. And so when we mapped this out, we use those addresses to figure out what the cost would be. So, I mean, it's
Is it a full bus, like a
No.
full-size bus? Smaller
well,
buses?
it's probably just a regular bus. The
Regular bus?
cost isn't much difference between a short bus
That's
and
what I
a long
figured.
bus.
I didn't even know if we had short buses.
Right.
So a bus will,
We do.
I mean, still
Well,
help me understand this. Like, are
right.
we busing to
So
their home school and then from
So
there to
we're working through
Marvin,
several
or-
different scenarios right now to figure out the best way, the most economical way to get them there. So in some of the scenarios, we might go and pick them up. Others, they may go to their home school. We might congregate there and run a bus. We might use a bus from another cluster. So the $100,000 is a safe bet for us next year.
So you're saying you don't anticipate the need for additional faculty to handle
No,
any of these students that come in? Okay.
it's not a program expansion in terms of the number of kids. It's a program expansion in terms of the distribution of where kids are coming from.
Okay. And you feel it's more advisable to add a transportation piece than to expand the program to another school such as a CATA?
I think 2 things. If you're talking about moving the physical program to another school, I'm not recommending that at the current
No, I
time.
mean add.
If you wanted to
Yeah.
expand, that is an 18 to 24 month process
Okay.
to even think about that. And we are working with additional high schools that might have an interest in that possible expansion, but we're not ready for that in the fall.
Well, and this will give us an idea too. I mean, traditionally, the IB program has been 98% Marvin students. So this will give us an idea if we start busing and we do other stuff, whether or not the program is a good idea at other schools. I think it's a
So,
great
Dr.
thing.
Hulan, is it running at capacity right now, or is it light?
It is running at capacity.
Yeah.
So if we're bringing additional students in from other schools, and
It's
it's
gotta be
traditionally been
additive,
Marvin.
right.
Yeah, like
I'd have to go back and double check. It was my understanding that we're not increasing the number of kids. It wouldn't be all of the kids that qualify in the Marvin cluster, and then we're adding all the other kids on top. It was
So
always
the
my,
program has 80 students and that's all that can get into it.
yes,
so maybe standards.
That's my
are coming up a
understanding.
bit, or
Lottery.
we can go back and double check. I don't see,
Lottery.
No, I said lottery. If your
It's an
your top end
application
is,
process.
No, he
Right.
means if too many people qualify.
Yeah.
How do you?
if we're opening up transportation and you only have 80 slots and that's the cap, what happens if you have 85 people that qualify and
You
are
just take it
interested?
off the top.
You do a lottery,
It's a,
whatever.
how you get it. I mean, it's how you rank. It's an interview process. It's definitely not a lottery. And
I
so you
will-
just take out the top first 80.
I'll ask
That
Dr.
cost,
Faust if you can get, with Ms. Cook, if you can follow up on her numbers.
I think they are included.
It might be, I'm not sure. This is my point.
That
Well, I
Marvin
think
is
that that's
increasing.
something we need to know because that would be an additional classroom at Marvin for if there's more students than what's currently there and additional teachers, right?
Well, I think the classes are different. Those classes can,
Okay,
those classes can.
but I'd like to just know that.
Okay.
Yeah,
I have a question on 19. Dennis, could you confirm how the true up funding, how we get that number and what documentation you have behind that?
It was
Provided?
given to me by the county CFO through the telephone.
Does he provide any documentation to back that up? To any?
Not until they adopt their budget.
What they believe the tax base is going to be next year, and that's it. But until they adopt a budget, they don't have anything specific.
No, true up is from the
This
current.
year.
Correct, but they will
Current
not
fiscal year.
give you a number in writing until they adopt their budget for next year.
In other words, until the fiscal year is over with. They
Correct.
close the books on it.
Correct.
This is what they're projecting because they figure they have 99.99% of their tax revenues in by now, so they can give you that number.
Yes, sir.
We're going to have a conversation about that at our joint meeting, definitely. 20, what did our utilities go up last year? Is 3% what we've been
Yes,
going
there
up?
was a 3% increase in the budget. I don't
I
know
know it
how
was
this
in the
running.
budget, but what did it run at?
I haven't done a study and the year hasn't closed out to figure out if it went up 3% for this year.
Can we, last few questions and then hold them to the board meeting? Because we're under some time pressure here.
so slide 24, the bus lifts. So if we're putting a new facility in, what's the need for the bus lifts at the existing? And is that-
We talked to
can
the
they be
transportation.
reused?
They needed those lifts years ago.
Will they be able to
they-
transfer to the
Yeah.
new
Yes.
facility? That's my
Yes.
question.
And we will have a request next year for additional lifts once the facility is up and running.
Because we have more bays at the new facility than we do at the
Will
old.
this come out of the bond?
What?
Will this come out of the bond money though?
The lifts
No.
are not included in the bond.
No.
FFA won't
Yep.
be included. Any other questions?
That's it.
All right. We'll move on to item 5, budget timeline. I would like to discuss with the committee and then to the full board. As Dennis mentioned, we have a date for the 26th with the joint meeting. I would like to propose instead of the 24th having a finance committee meeting, I would like to propose either on Monday evening, the 23rd, or Tuesday, the 24th at 8 a.m. or approximate in the morning, a board work session in preparation for the joint meeting on the 26th. And I'd like to get some feedback from the committee on that.
I think that's a good idea. I think we need to get together as a board before we go into the joint, because we've discussed it as a finance committee, but we're not going to discuss it as a full board really. So that would be a good opportunity to do that before we go into the joint meeting.
And that would be our first opportunity, would it not, to see the specific capital building projects.
Yes, because
After-
we meet tomorrow morning.
Yeah, facilities.
Right,
So
and
for
the
the whole board
budget
to see.
that I'm looking at is a little bit higher than what is in here, so. we'll have to
All right,
work
so
on
is
that.
there a general consensus? I'm open to either a Monday evening or a Tuesday morning. Is there a particular preference that the committee would like to express?
To the members of the board who have jobs.
Well, everybody has a job. You're flexible? Joe?
I'd prefer the evening.
I have an opinion, if I can
Yes.
add it in.
Yes.
I'd prefer if the finance committee and the board could meet on that Monday evening. The reason for that is if we need to make any changes to this, the more days we have in between the joint
Alright.
meeting, the better.
Is this facility available on the 23rd? Anyone know?
We can check.
Okay.
It doesn't- we'll make
get
it
a side
available.
room. Okay. So I'm going to propose a change to be recommended to the full board this evening, that we adjust the budget timeline, Board of Education budget timeline, to instead of a work session or finance committee meeting on the 24th, that it be held on the 6 p.m. April 23rd in preparation for the joint meeting on the 26th. Is that with consensus? We'll propose that to the full board. Okay. That brings us,
Table the budget amendments, given the time to the next meeting to talk about.
all right, we'll postpone that to the next meeting. Are there any other business to come before the committee? If not, I'll hear a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All right. Second? Second? Okay. All in favor?
Yeah.
We stand adjourned. Thank you.